Hey everybody, welcome to the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have Congressman Eric Swalwell back in the back room today. But before we get to him, I want to thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, follow or subscribe. And this way you will be notified every time we post a new episode. And don't forget to stick around to the end for our special surprise celebrity close.
I think it's a very dangerous thing to even talk about because we do have a tremendously passionate group of voters. And I mean, maybe 100, 150. I've never seen anything like it. Much more passion than they had in 2020 and much more passion than they had in 2016. I think it would be very dangerous.
Isn't it unbelievable that the man who is about to be indicted for inciting a deadly insurrection is threatening to incite another insurrection?
Unbelievable in 2015, but not today. It's pretty much...
It really does speak to the thing I say all the time about like there being no bottom. Every time I feel like there's nothing else this man can do to reach a new low, he finds a way to make me go, did he just fucking say that? Did he literally just threaten another insurrection?
How can it hurt? Really? I mean, look at what's happening to him. It would only benefit him.
I don't think he understands that he's fighting an existential crisis over his freedom in a court of law. He seems to think that the court of public opinion is where he needs victory.
Well, he needs victory in about a half dozen states. And that's about it. There's 45 or so states already. We know where they're going to vote. And he's going to try and get his base and the legislators in those states to flip the election when he loses, because he's almost certainly going to be the nominee and he's going to be running against Biden. And everything he's doing is to basically flip a few of those 5 or 6 states.
But wait, there's more. Last night he posted on his Truth Social and literally said this: if you fuck around with us, if you do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that you have never been done before.
And he means it.
What is he, fucking Don Corleone? Either he is completely absent of any human emotion or ability to understand the consequences that he's facing for his words and actions.
Yes.
Or he's just stupid.
Yes.
Or he's just a sociopath.
Yes.
Or he's daring Jack Smith.
Yes.
I am going to be so happy when this man goes to prison.
What will you do with your time?
What would I do with my time? Oh, Jen. There'll be another crusade that I find to be on, like taking down Ron DeSantis.
Oh, good.
I think that DeSantis does that all by himself.
He does. My God, that guy.
So true.
I'm the worst candidate that ever entered politics.
Did you see he came in 3rd in a poll behind someone I never even heard of?
Who was it?
I'm shaking it up. We're rebooting.
The proof is in the pudding.
My God, he is in trouble.
Pudding.
He is in. And you know what the new strategy with DeSantis is? I heard this morning.
Yeah.
It's like, they're going to make me the underdog now. I'm like the underdog. I'm a loser.
Well,
That's it. The strategy is to make me a loser.
To reinforce that meme, he's firing his staff because he can't afford to pay
Getting rid of them all. Losers. There's not much difference. Like, Trump is DeSantis. They move their hands the same way. Their cadence is the same. The words that they use, is all about like disgusting, awful, disgusting.
He's a bad copy of Trump.
Trump did a rally in Iowa last Saturday night, which was chock full of bullshit and lies, of course. But this was my favorite moment.
Never have said this, even though it's true. But I don't think I could have said it before. But now it's very easy to say Biden is the most corrupt president in the history of our country by far. Every time the radical left Democrats, Marxists, communists, and fascists indict me, I consider it to be a great badge of honor and courage. I'm doing it for you. I'm being indicted for you. Better me than you, right?
It's a badge of honor to be indicted, and it's a badge of honor to vote for someone who's been indicted multiple times. That's where we are today. That's where the Republican Party is today. And the other thing is, when Trump starts off a sentence with, "and this is true," like, it's just not. It's as opposite. It's like if truth was in New York, what he's about to say is California, right? It couldn't be further from the truth, right? So Sunday night, he got a target letter from the Department of Justice and Special Counsel Jack Smith. And in that letter, he was told by the DOJ that he is the target of the January 6th investigation. And they referenced 3 statutes. One is deprivation of rights under color of law. The second one is conspiracy to defraud. And the third is witness tampering. These are all very serious things. And this signals that there's an imminent indictment coming. So after the target letter was received, as expected, Republicans came out to defend Trump. This includes Ron DeSanctimonious, Tim Scott, Pence. But first, I want to play House Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
If you noticed recently, President Trump went up in the polls and was actually surpassing President Biden for re-election. So what do they do now? Weaponize government to go after their number one opponent. It's time and time again. I think the American public is tired of this. They want to see equal justice, and the idea that they utilize this to go after those who politically disagree with them is wrong.
But this was McCarthy on January 6th, 2021.
Some say the riots were caused by Antifa. There is absolutely no evidence of that. And conservatives should be the first to say so. That doesn't mean the president is free from fault. The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term.
I mean, these people have no moral center. They have nothing, no core. And then we learned that McCarthy and New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik spoke with Trump this Tuesday to strategize the messaging and the defense over J6. Mike Pence, who is not only the whitest human being and the most boring human being, but he's just probably the most cowardly human being. Here's him defending Trump.
With regard to the prospect of an indictment, I hope it doesn't come to that. I'm not convinced that the president acting on the bad advice of a group of crank lawyers that came into the White House in the days before January 6th is actually criminal.
What a fucking coward that guy is. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's not criminal? Really? He admitted that Trump wanted him to steal the election for him. He admitted that Trump wanted him killed. He admitted that Trump's words and actions that day put the country in grave danger, but he's not sure. I'm not sure it's criminal. Fuck him. Here's Trump defending himself.
I didn't know practically what a subpoena was and grand juries and all of this. Now I'm like becoming an expert. If you say something about an election, they want to put you in jail for the rest of your life. It's a disgrace.
They all must think the base are just the biggest bunch of dumbass morons. He's filed about 4,000 lawsuits in his life. He doesn't know what a subpoena is?
Trump is just going to play to his base, and you're right. They don't care, and that's it.
On Tuesday, everybody was waiting for Judge Aileen Cannon to issue her ruling in the scheduling of the Mar-a-Lago stolen classified documents case, and she kicked the can down a little bit. She said she would have a written order promptly, but she seems disinclined to grant Trump's request to push it out till after the election. So we'll see what happens there. We also learned that Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel charged 16 people in the fake elector scheme. That's really interesting. They're going to just fucking flip without question. Those people ain't going to jail. A judge denied Trump's request for a new E. Jean Carroll trial. A judge rejected his bid to move the hush money case to a federal court from New York. So again, the courts are not on Trump's side. He continues to lose in every single case. And he doesn't seem to understand that he's not going to win this thing in the court of public opinion. A new Monmouth poll was out this morning. Interesting. Shows Biden up by 7 points, 47-40, in a head-to-head matchup. But here's the really fascinating thing. When it involves a third-party candidate, Biden's up by 9.
Really?
39-30.
Really?
Really?
Huh.
Indicating that a third-party candidate will negatively impact Trump more than Biden. Now, that said, it's a new poll. It's only one. It contradicts other polls that have previously been released. And so we'll see if this is actually a trend going forward or just some kind of anomaly. But it appears that Democrats are not getting excited over this poll.
I wouldn't get excited over that poll.
I knew you would
That
get
makes absolutely no sense. First off, third-party
Not true, Matty says.
How do you possibly make a poll about a third-party candidate when you don't even have that third-party candidate on the list? I mean, who is it going to take from if you don't even know who it is?
Well, I mean, there's Kennedy, there's Manchin. It's just interesting. You can't ignore the data. I wouldn't bet the farm on the data. And
I'd be terrified.
Well, I mean, at some point, there's going to be another poll and another poll and another poll. And if there's a trend, then, polls are never really wrong. They may be off, but they're not wrong.
Well, they can be off enough to be wrong.
And the greatest news of this week is the release of Joe Biden's new campaign ad, which I got to say is probably the most brilliant in the history of politics.
So Biden had the largest public investment in social infrastructure and environmental programs that is actually finishing what FDR started, that LBJ expanded on, and Joe Biden is attempting to complete. Programs to address education, medical care, urban problems, rural poverty, transportation, Medicare, Medicaid, labor unions. And he still is working on it.
Okay, that was Marjorie Taylor Greene. And no, that's not AI. It wasn't photoshopped or doctored. It is actually Marjorie Taylor Greene thinking that the base is so stupid that she could literally say the equivalent of all of these things that matter most in your life, in housing, education, medical insurance, all of those things Joe Biden's going to give you. Ha! Isn't he awful? She's talking as if those are all bad things.
It was fantastic, and I was just going to give Marjorie Taylor Greene credit for being so honest.
Yeah. Unwittingly. All right, let's get to our winners and losers.
My winner, Justice. Michigan charges 16 Trump electors who falsely claimed he won the state. Accountability is absolutely essential to resolving the damage done to our democracy over the last several years by election deniers and election losers. My loser, Republicans, for blocking State Department, Defense Department, and Department of Justice nominees and creating a deepening national security risk.
My winner is Greta Gerwig for Barbie. Not only did she make a movie that made GOP's head explode,
He's not fucking around, is he?
Incredibly entertaining. I had the fortune of seeing a preview, and it was campy yet deeply moving and brilliantly subversive. And my loser is country music singer Jason Aldean for his white nationalist vision of America with his incredibly racist video titled "Try That in a Small Town." Thankfully, the video has been pulled.
You are a Barbie girl.
In a Barbie world.
That movie was phenomenal.
I can't wait to see it.
My winner, Wesleyan University, which announced it's ending legacy admissions following affirmative action ruling last month by the Supreme Court. My loser, Donald Trump. Who knew? Who knew? All right, that gets us to our weekly rant. So the twice impeached, twice indicted, sexual assault convicted Republican frontrunner Donald Trump appears on the verge of being indicted yet again, this time for inciting the January 6th insurrection. I'm getting indicted for you. They're coming after you. I'm just in the way. This is what he said to his Iowa rally goers last weekend. And his brainwashed cultists just keep lapping up the bullshit. No doubt there are Trumpers who've peeled away, abandoned him because the better voices in their head eventually won the debate, and they've been able to self-deprogram. But there are still tens of millions of the most fiercely loyal, He can grab my pussy anytime, Kool-Aid drinking, one step away from the cyanide, hopelessly brainwashed. Nothing he does, nothing he says, or any trouble he gets into will change that. But worse, the GOP is filled with vomitous cowards like House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who begged for his life on January 6th and condemned him for it. And now he's just among his most shameless defenders. And then there are the presidential opponents like Mike Pence, Tim Scott, Ron DeSantis, who've clearly failed to receive the "you're running against Trump, so it's okay to attack him" memo. And then there's cowards like Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, whose state was a ground zero in Trump's scheme to steal the election, but indicated this week he'd vote for him if he was the nominee. And there's Pence, who, after being pressed 3 times by News Nation's Elizabeth Vargas, refused to say he wouldn't end up campaigning for Trump if he won the nomination. Campaigning for the sadistic sociopath who wanted him swinging from the gallows. Seriously? He would actually campaign for Trump? As the Meghan Trainor song goes, it's all about that bass. Yeah, it's pretty clear I ain't no size 2, but I can shake it like I'm supposed to do, 'cause I got that boom boom that all the boys chase. Sure as fuck sounds like Trump, no? They are terrified of that bass. And it's paralyzed them and turned them into democracy-raping, dictator-worshipping cowards. They should actually change the party's name to the COP, Cowardly Old Party. It's time for Congressman Eric Swalwell. He represents California's 14th Congressional District. He's a former prosecutor, and he serves on the House Judiciary Committee and the House Homeland Security Committee. He was also appointed by former Speaker Nancy Pelosi to serve as an impeachment manager for Donald Trump's second impeachment trial. Congressman, welcome back into the back room.
Oh, Andy, thanks for having me back. A lot's been going on.
One of the things I want to ask you about before we get into all the craziness in Washington and in particular in the House, this week you tweeted you were on a plane with your son, I guess the whole family, and you were in a bathroom, and he was napping, and it was like, this is the only place he naps. I wanted to ask you, because you're very public on social media with your family and your children, how important is it to you that your constituents, your followers, see you in that same role that many of them are in, which is you're just a guy trying to balance fatherhood and parenting with work?
It's day to day too, right? Like you can't really see too far ahead. And by the way, Andy, before he was sleeping, he was screaming. So you know that on an airplane. And people did ask, and so I do want to clarify. There were 4 bathrooms. This was a big plane. There were 4 bathrooms in that row. So I was mindful that I didn't want to. I wasn't going to just occupy the only bathroom. But no, I think I'm a better legislator because I got 3 little kids. Mm-hmm. And I think it's made me work smarter, not harder, because I have to say no to more things that I'd like because, family is a priority. But I think in the effectiveness side, if I can take what I'm experiencing and, trying to find childcare, thinking about, what the cost of college is going to be, because it's going to be, around the corner. My wife, when she was, every time she's traveled and has been breastfeeding, she's gotten the weirdest looks and the oddest interactions with TSA folks. A lot of times she travels by herself. She's got her own business, and she would be transporting breast milk because you still have to pump while you're, whether the kid's with you or not. And right. They would interrogate her and ask well, where's the children if this is really breast milk? And it's like, are you kidding me? And so I have written legislation, and we're working to change the way that breastfeeding mothers are treated at TSA. So I think if you can take, what is a crushing challenge and experience and actually understand that your constituents are in many ways experiencing it, and then learn to legislate around it to make it, more manageable for everyone, I think that is a positive. And so I've included them in my social media posts because I often learn from them, and I know my constituents, as I said, and many of them are going through the same hustle and struggle.
Mm-hmm. We recently had your colleague Jimmy Gomez on, and we talked a lot about his dad's caucus. Are you in that?
I'm in the dad's caucus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Jimmy, by the way, the congressional picnic is this week. And so Jimmy's son is in town, and he was scrambling to find a pack and play, like basically a portable crib. So I was able to get him a pack and play. So that's the Dad's Caucus. It's about legislation as much as it is just dad hacks on how to solve whatever the issue.
So you have a
is.
dad's message board, hey, anybody got a
we do
pack and play?
We got a group chat, and a lot of us. It's mostly just giving each other grief, but yeah, a lot of it is do you have a pack and play?
How about hey, my kid's screaming his head off. Does anybody want to take him for 5 minutes? Any of those messages going around?
Or when do I turn the car seat around? In the car. It's a lot of stuff like that.
So let's talk about work. There's a lot going on in the House in particular.
Speaking of children, yes.
Yes. Speaking of petulant children. Last week there was the Jim Jordan's weaponization hearing, and Christopher Wray, FBI director, sat there and incredulously at one moment said, "I am a Trump appointee. I am a lifelong Republican. To accuse me of using the FBI to weaponize against conservatives is insane." And in that hearing, when it was your turn to speak, and this is a quote, you said, "Director, I think it's quite rich that the guy that has accused you of lawlessness and weaponization is 400 days into violation of his own congressional subpoena." This is Jim Jordan. "Over January 6th. Quite rich to me that you're hearing all of these allegations from somebody who won't even respond to a lawful subpoena." Does someone like Jim Jordan, do these people even realize how hypocritical they sound, appear when they go on the attack? It's just this Freudian projection on steroids.
You used the perfect word, and it's projection. And we're seeing that right now as Donald Trump has put out this claim that he received a target letter, and they're losing their minds that he could be indicted. And it's projection because if they were in the power of a prosecutor, they would use that power to go after their political opponents. So they assume that is how Jack Smith and Chris Wray and others are using their awesome responsibility that they have, which is to go after Jim Jordan and who they believe that they're doing this because they're political opponents. Of course, that's crazy. That's to use Ray's phrase. That's insane. Just because you're corrupt doesn't mean that the prosecutors and the FBI are corrupt. But that's what we're dealing with, is that they would be willing to use their power to punish political opponents. So they're just assuming that you would do the same thing.
And they are doing it. I mean, this whole Biden crime family rampage that they're on is just unconscionable in the face.
Andy, I was just watching the hearing, and I think it jumped the shark pretty early into it this afternoon when Marjorie Taylor Greene pulled out some of Hunter Biden's non-consensual nudes. I'm not kidding you. She's waving around the pictures of the non-consensual nudes. And it was never about having any evidence. It's just they wanted to use a private citizen's laptop, which was stolen, or it wasn't seized by the FBI. It wasn't turned over to the public by Hunter. They don't have ideas. They don't have policies. So it's just a hit and run. It's a smear job, and it's because they're completely bankrupt of solving anyone's problem who they represent.
But again, it's also hypocrisy because, I'm going to go on a limb here, but I suspect if you go through Madge's laptop, you're going to find some non-consensual nudes, and
don't want to see it. Don't want to see it.
I don't want to see it either, but I'm sure it exists. But in the face of unprecedented corruption and treason in the Trump crime family, in that
mafia crime
mob kind of way, do they just think that their base is so stupid and brainwashed? There really isn't a shred of evidence of criminality. At the same time, your guy is getting indicted 100 times.
That's right. And by the way, the Trump Organization lawyer just got out of jail recently. Paul Manafort was in jail for a long time till Trump saved him. Steve Bannon was going to jail. Roger Stone was going to jail. So, the people who were, closest to his business and his politics were all, either convicted or in jail until Donald Trump saved them. So again, it's insane. It's ludicrous. But they just assume that what's being done to them is politically motivated, because that's how they.
And what do you make of what's happening right now? These two IRS quote unquote whistleblowers with Hunter Biden. Is there any there?
No, Hunter Biden didn't pay his taxes, was indicted for not paying his taxes, has actually paid back his taxes. And that's more that can be said for any Trump indictment or anyone around Trump, but no one has, pled guilty, right? They all just say fake news. And by the way, no Democrat, threatened democracy or threatened violence or threatened a judge or threatened a prosecutor when Hunter Biden was indicted.
Right.
He took responsibility and we moved on. Like, that's kind of how our criminal justice system is supposed to work. And so, no, there's no signs of misconduct. And by the way, going back to what you said about Christopher Wray, the prosecutor who tried this case, and who stayed on under Biden was appointed, by Donald Trump. So look, what they're really upset, or who they should really be upset at, is that Christopher Wray and
you're talking about
Durham,
Weiss, right? The prosecutor.
Yeah. So Wray, Weiss, and Durham all were appointed by Trump. They should be upset with Trump that he didn't appoint someone who would be as corrupt as he wanted it to be, right? Like, they're upset that these people aren't corrupt. That's the crux of this, is that the people Trump appointed didn't end up being as corrupt as Trump had hoped.
Well, you're raising a really interesting point, and the irony is that Trump and his acolytes always talk about the deep state, how the deep state is out to get him and persecute him. But literally, all of the people you've mentioned, all the people that are truly responsible for trying to take him down, you could define the deep state as Republicans, and mostly those who either were appointed by him or worked for him at some point.
Andy, the way I see it is sure, there is a deep state, Donald Trump. You appointed them, and guess what? They all turned out and testified against you in the January 6th committee, and now you're in deep shit. That's the deep state.
Right.
You appointed them.
But yet the cult believes that it's all Democratic pedophiles. And guys like you and I could sit here and intellectualize all of this and talk about truth and facts and reality. But when you have tens of millions of Americans who literally think Joe Biden is in Gitmo and JFK Jr. is coming back, how do we ever break through that? Because that's the disease.
So I've thought about, it's a great question. I've thought about it a lot. And I'll give you Hunter Biden's laptop as an example. There's many others. We're never going to win on the merits. They're that, as you said, that there's no connection to Joe Biden being corrupt on anything in this laptop, other than there's a lot of non-consensual nudes that they're showing, which is just weird. So my goal has been with the laptop, or like say the way they treat trans kids, is to just impose a creep cost, that the public should know that you are obsessed with this person's non-consensual nudes, that on trans kids, that you are obsessed with on-demand gender checks. And that's weird, right? Like let's put them on defense. Let's play on their side of the field instead of, getting into the legalese of all of this, because that's not going to cut through. Just impose a creep cost for what they want to do, because everything that they want to do, whether it's, invading your bedroom. And I thought that condom ad was great. That was run out of Ohio around, reproductive rights, or invading our kids' locker room, or invading a private citizen's laptop. Like, that's just creepy. It's weird. And we should make them feel creepy and weird about it, because that's how it feels to me. And so I think sometimes we overthink this stuff, and we should just call it what it is.
You're raising another interesting point, which I bring up all the time. Why are Republicans so obsessed with trans, LGBTQ, with sex, with vaginas? They're obsessed with this stuff. And yet they come at it as the morality police, and they're the ones obsessed, and they win that argument.
The best defense is an aggressive offense. And so we have to get off our heels. And as I said, be on, their side of the field. And so
what does the creep cost look like? What does that actually mean in real terms?
Yeah. So, as I said, in the hearing last week, it was laptop. And I finally just said to them, I said, guys, it's really weird that you're so obsessed with the private citizen's non-consensual nudes. It's just weird to me that, I thought you would want to win the election on ideas, not this kind of stuff. And then I went back and asked my staff, I said, how many times after I went at them that way did they say the word laptop? and my staff said 0. So you have to make, you're not going to win on the merits because they don't care about the merits. Right. But if you plainly call it what it is, I do think that works. And on the trans issue, as I said, we have to make this their obsession, not our obsession. Because as you and I know, this is an issue where Republicans have parents believing that, little Sally would be an Olympic swimmer if it wasn't for the trans kid that, stands in her way.
Right.
Okay. We know that's not happening, but we should play this out to its logical conclusion, which is if they want to ban trans kids in sports, you are creating gender checks. And that's weird, right? Like you're creating the gender check system in our schools. And so we should just call it that and make them explain, how they're going to enforce this. And so that's what I think the creep cost is you're not, as I said, they're not intellectual enough to want to, have a meritorious argument. So I just want to create a hot stove that they're not going to touch.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. And I believe Democrats should play tough. I think one of the reasons why people love you is that you're one of the Democrats who does that and can be effective with that. But again, in reality, I remember watching Trump rallies years ago when he was president, and you'd see women wearing T-shirts with an arrow pointed down, and the text would say, "He can grab my pussy anytime." And you're like, seriously? Like, you have any children? You have daughters? Can he do that to them too? Like, when grown women are like, yeah, that's fine. Like, is the creep cost is that currency have any real value?
Yeah. It's not going to work with that person, but I still think we are winning the great big center right now as Democrats, and we're on a winning streak. Ever since Donald Trump was elected, he's been a giant loser. Right? We won the House in 18.
Absolutely.
We kept the House in 20. Won the White House. Won the Senate. Held the Senate. Avoided the big red wave in the House in 22. We won recently in Jacksonville, the Supreme Court, and Wisconsin,
flipped Georgia, flipped Arizona, flipped Michigan,
Yeah, so I think we have a nice frame of like we are for competence and community, and they are for chaos and creepiness, right? Like that's a nice frame, and we don't have to invent a new playbook or new policy ideas. I think that's winning. And then so what are the 3 things we have to do this Congress the next 2 years? Well, we had to pay America's bills, raise the debt ceiling. More Democrats voted for that than Republicans. So we showed, again, competence. We have to keep the government open in 2 months when the Republicans are going to be hell-bent on shutting it down. They're going to shut down the government. Democrats are going to be the ones that find a way to reopen it. I can see it a mile away. So again, we will show, competence. And then on Ukraine, where democracy is on the line there and it could, come to us, that fight, we are leading the way as 100 Republicans voted against funding Ukraine last week. And so I think just staying, and as I said, in that big center is where most Americans are. And we will be rewarded with majorities and the White House in the upcoming election.
Well, it's a good segue. I wanted to ask you about the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA as it's more commonly known. Early on in this conversation, you said something about the Republican Party being broken or dead. But in the past, the Republicans at least would verbalize that they were for national defense, that they were for law and order, family values, fiscal responsibility. One by one, we've seen those virtues be tossed out the window. But national defense is, partisanship ends at the shore, all that stuff. Military, pro this, pro soldiers and all that. Then we saw that eroded under Trump, attacks on the generals, attacks on POWs, attacks on Gold Star families. Yeah. And here we are today in the Senate with Tommy Tuberville, in the House with James Comer, the Oversight Committee. So now you can hold up military funding because you don't like abortion. I mean, that would never have been done a couple of years ago.
And it affects our readiness, right? Like if the military becomes Texas, right? And talk to any young woman in America right now, and if she got into a college in Texas, she's having a conversation with her parents about whether that's safe for her. Like that's it. I've talked to enough people in enough places that is happening, right? So do you want the military to become like Texas, where young women are wondering if they can serve because they may not be able to make that decision if that happens in their life? On diversity, equity, and inclusion, it has become a more and more diverse country. If you have people who are saying we want the Confederate flags, or we want the Confederate statues and the Confederate base names to come back, and we want to get rid of, by the way, recruitment of people of color. Like, is that going to help us be the most prepared military in the world if it only looks like white men? Like, I don't think it is. And so to me, like, put aside like just the equity here on military readiness and being the best fighting force in the world, we're alienating women and people of color who make up a majority of the country. So it just doesn't, on a readiness standpoint, make much sense to me.
Yeah, and the rhetoric doesn't make sense either. When the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives tweets, quote, "We don't want Disneyland to train our military." And not only is that just moronic, but it's not even remotely true. It's just rhetoric designed to feed the brainwashed base more MAGA red meat. And people are just gobbling it up.
But not enough people are gobbling it up for them to win anything meaningful. So that's where I hope your viewers, I hope the message they take away is, don't be pessimistic about this upcoming election. We have the reasons to be confident, and confidence begets confidence. We have to do the work. We have to register more people. We have to engage more people. We have to talk more about our successes, not be so modest. We have to be on offense rather than defense on these issues. But we're going to win in 24. And that's, as I said, because we want community and they want chaos. We want competence, and they just bring culture war. And so we're on the right side of this. We have, a winning streak, to show that it's working. So, yeah, I don't want people to be pessimistic. And I think sometimes Democrats can be of the bedwetting nature, and that doesn't help us when we have to go win elections. And I'm confident going into this upcoming election because they've shown us who they are, and Americans keep projecting.
Yeah, I personally agree with you 100%, and I say it all the time that Democrats get upset about the messaging and all this, but the truth is the messaging is working because, as you said, we've won almost everything in the last 7-8 years.
Yeah.
But I think the issue is not so much the strategy of winning, because that seems to be working pretty well, with the exception of the House flipping by 4 or 5 seats, largely due to redistricting in my state, New York. But the issue is just the disease that has infiltrated our country. I love that we've been winning everything, but I kind of hate living in a country where tens of millions of people are just like zombies. And that's what worries me.
Me too. And I'm the son of 2 Republicans. My wife is from Southern Indiana. You can imagine like the politics in her family. I hate to see where we are right now, but I also recognize that this is a fever that we have to break. Like that MAGAism, this election. Look, it either we break the fever or we don't survive. Like it's just we will not be the country that we've all known. It'll go, the way of Turkey. It'll go the way of Hungary and other, democracies that are drifting toward authoritarianism. And so that's what is at stake. If this was, to use the parlance of California, if this was a TV show, this election is the series finale. We either, as I said, extinguish Trumpism or it's cemented.
Well, I was going to ask you, because, with all your confidence, it does still sound like foundationally you agree with what Democrats have been saying for the last several elections, which is this upcoming election is the most important in our history.
Because in the first term for Trump, he put into his cabinet the people who had to execute his agenda, relatively experienced individuals. And they all turned on him, right? Because they ended up seeing who he was. Tillerson, Mattis, who's vice president eventually. He won't make the same mistake this time. He will get better. He'll be a more effective mob boss. And you won't see any experience. You'll just see people who are going to carry out, his vindictive, vision for the country. And so that's, and he won't relinquish power again.
Miles Taylor wrote a book pretty much about that. Like he says, I didn't want to write a book the same as 50 other people about what happened during the Trump year. I want to write a book about if this man wins again, what America is going to look like. And he basically said the same thing you just said, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. Getting back to Marjorie Taylor Greene for a second, everyone's talking about the cage match, supposedly, that might happen with Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. But wouldn't it be great to have a cage match with MTG and Lauren Boebert? I'd pay $99.99 for that.
I mean, it feels like I work at the WWE already. It's sad, Andy. It's just like that's what they've debased the place into.
Mm.
And
are you surprised that she got kicked out of the Freedom Caucus? Is that just because she supports McCarthy?
It's like getting kicked out of the bar in Star Wars, right? Like you have to really try hard to get kicked out of the Freedom Caucus. Like these aren't people who have the highest standards in the world,
right?
So yeah, I'll still say this: McCarthy has the title of Speaker of the House. Marjorie Taylor Greene has the job. Right. Like you can't do anything past like what she's willing to do, which is also just a scary place to be. So my hope is that we beat both of them, but we're going to beat Boebert. She had the closest election in 2022, and she hasn't gotten better. So.
Well, I appreciate your time and your insights, and enjoy the picnic, and look forward to next time.
Cool. Thanks, Andy.
La 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 la, the back room. La 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 la, the back room. Elmo loves his podcast, and Andy too. That's Elmo's world. Well, that's episode 96. Elmo likes episode 96. Eric Swalwell is a great congressman. If you like the back room as much as Elmo does, let us know. Leave a message for Elmo at 845-307-7446. And Elmo has email at backroomandy@gmail.com. Or tweet to Elmo at Andy Ostroy. And boys and girls, remember to rate and review the episode and follow or subscribe. And you'll never miss an episode. Elmo wants to now thank all his backroom friends, co-producer, co-editor, and engineer Matty Rosenberg Monster, co-producer Prairie Jen Hammoud, Cricket Lengyel for making special logo, Andy Hollander for nice music, Patricia Wynn, and the Epicurean for Backroom Studio. See you next time!